The Baltimore Ravens lose by the final score of 16-13 in week 1 of the 2024 preseason. We talk about Nate Wiggins and his stardom, his injury, who played well, who didn't, and so much more coming up on this instant reaction live edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into a post-game live edition, instant reaction of Locked On Ravens. We are your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, and I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you as always on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here tonight. It is Friday late night here if you're live with us on the show and making us your first listen of the night or of the day here, and just a part of your day in general. We're free and available for you always on all podcasting platforms. So in video form on YouTube and in audio form wherever you get your shows, we have you covered for 5 days a week of Ravens content, plus bonus episodes like this. We go live after every single Ravens game. And of course, we go live after every piece of Ravens big news as well. Tonight's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn jobs helps find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Man, it feels so good, if we're being honest, to just say we're in a post-game live edition here for Locked On Ravens. Ravens football is back. Obviously not the result the Ravens were hoping for, but there is a lot to take away. So over the course of this show, obviously we'll talk about the game in general, go over some stats. We'll get into Nate Wiggins and his incredible performance. We'll talk about the injury as well. I know that's on a lot of people's minds. John Harbaugh, speaking to the media just a couple of minutes ago, did not have an update, said that the Ravens will know more with testing tomorrow, but we can kind of look at what we saw there and see if there is anything to be concerned about. We'll also dive into a mini stock reporter, though tomorrow we're going to have a bonus episode coming out at 6 a.m. talking about a full stock report on that. Chat is already going. We have so many people already. We got Joe in the chat. We got Kieran in the chat, just a bit outside. Rick is here. We got a lot of people already, so appreciate everybody who was tuning in. Little late night Locked On Ravens action. So let's just start with the general game. And honestly, this was a wild way to end this game, if we're being honest. I do not like ties whatsoever, but I'd rather the Ravens tie than lose, obviously. And the way that we saw this game end, Jake Elliott, who was great pretty early in his career, I think he's fallen off quite a bit. And he dunked one extra point, one field goal, 2 kicks off the upright, the second one being a 50-yarder that would have given the Eagles the lead. And so the game remains tied at 13-13 with 40-some seconds left, 50-some seconds left. And then, I think it was 15, honestly. It was 15 seconds. I'm already blocking it out of my mind. But then Emory Jones comes in. It was his first snap, and he fumbles the ball, and the Eagles get the ball back, and Jake Elliott gets a second chance, and he drills it. And I tweet, I say, Jake Elliott has the chance to do the funniest thing ever. So one of the crazier preseason endings, because again, in the preseason, there are no ties. So if you tie, there's no overtime. So it doesn't necessarily matter for that. But yeah, tough night for the Ravens quarterbacks. Obviously, Lamar Jackson did not play, but we'll get into that. I don't think that it was a very encouraging game for those guys. And I think over the course of the next week or so, we might have to be talking about, do the Ravens have their backup quarterback on the roster or not? Because when we talk about stock up, stock down, Josh Johnson is definitely on the downturn there. But let's just go over general box score first, as we usually do, and then we will get into the chat and the comments. Again, Josh Johnson, 412 for 62 yards, was inaccurate on a lot of throws, and just it wasn't great for Josh Johnson. He's had a great career. He's been a lot of places. He's done a lot of things. I just was not impressed at all with Josh Johnson tonight, and that's kind of been the feeling coming out of camp. If you've been listening to this show, we've had guests on this show who have been locked into training camp. We had Jeff Rebeck on today for Friday. If you haven't checked out that episode, Jeff was amazing. We've had other people on this show, Paul Mancano, Nikhil Mehta, and the general consensus here is Josh Johnson has not looked great in camp. and he did not look great here as well. Devin Leary comes in, went 6 of 10 for 37 yards. I thought he looked better than Johnson. Him and Dayton Wade had a couple of nice connections. One of the guys I was really impressed with, though, was Owen Wright. 7 for 33 on the ground. He looked explosive. He also had a catch for 17 yards. He looked explosive. He looked really good in this game to me. Rashid Ali, 10 for 26. Was stuffed at the goal line 3 times, or the Ravens were at least, and Ali wasn't putting his head down and getting in there. So if there is a running back 3 competition while Keaton Mitchell is out, Owen Wright, I think, went over, and just did his thing. And then receiver-wise, Dayton Wade had a tough drop earlier in the game, but then did recover later in the game with Devin Leary. They connected on passes of, I believe, 13, 11. So he went 427. Tyler Wallace had an incredible 19-yard catch that was, he went the other way for it, which was awesome. He had 2 for 26. Then on defense, Trent Simpson led the way with 11 total tackles. He was all over the place, played downhill, was super physical. Josh Ross, I thought, also played really well. He was a guy that caught my eye, had 8 total tackles in this game. Then you have guys like Daryl Worley and Joe Evans, who we'll talk about. But obviously, I think the big conversation point is Nate Wiggins. Wiggins was someone that was all eyes were on Nate, right? All eyes on Nate in this game. And he played with tenacity. He played with fire. He was sticky in coverage. His first pass breakup might have had a little bit of a tug on there, but you know what? It was marginal enough to where nobody called it. But on 4 pass plays for Philadelphia, or 4 plays in general, he was all the way in there on 3 of them. He had 3 pass breakups and then had a 4th one, which, he did a little stare down with the receiver, which he plays with that fire. We know that. And then also had a play, and this is the one that got him injured. He was coming downhill, made a shoulder tackle on the ball carrier, and, it was a good hit. He got up, was kind of waving his arms a little bit, celebrating, and then we saw him go into the medical tent, ended up leaving the field in the Ravens broadcast, and you could see him kind of walking down the stairs, was not moving his arm or his shoulder. So that's the big concern point, I think, with Nate Wiggins. And Ravens 76 More saying, is Wiggins okay? We don't know yet. John Harbaugh spoke to the media about 10, 15 minutes ago and said that they have no updates on anybody, any status, and says that they'll know more with testing tomorrow. But I think that, to me, Wiggins, this is exactly the preseason debut that you wanted to see out of Nate Wiggins. Again, he was sticky in coverage. He was somebody that went out there and played with that fire and energy. And you're telling me that this guy is going to be the number 3 corner to start the season? Again, behind Marlon Humphrey, behind Brandon Stevens. That room is incredibly deep. Nate Wiggins was really, really good. And in my opinion, he's someone that the skill set is just needed in today's NFL, where a lot of these offenses have speedster wide receivers, and Nate Wiggins, with his, ran a 4.3 speed. He has that 40. He's someone that can come in and make an impact against offenses like the Chiefs and against offenses, that have those speed players. But he's not just a speed corner. He has so many other elements to his game that he showed. So I was impressed by him. And again, for the Ravens, I don't think you could have asked for a better preseason debut for Nate Wiggins. He showed all the tools, all the intangibles that I think this team wanted to see. And to have the luxury of him being your 3rd corner behind Marlon Humphrey and Brandon Stevens, that makes it all the better, because a player of that skill set you can, of course, use in certain packages. But I think, even if you look just a couple years down the line, right, if we're looking at this performance and then what he can be, Nate Wiggins has incredible potential, and he certainly showed a lot of it against the Eagles on Friday night. So that was a great game for him. I think it's awesome. And yes, just a bit outside. No more tomorrow after he gets the testing. And again, a bit handsy. And he actually talked about this in his media availability back in July, where he just said getting less grabby. And I think we all know another Ravens corner that gets a little grabby in Marlon Humphrey, right? That physicality. In Wiggins, again, he is not the biggest guy. He is slender. He's slight of frame, compared to a Marlon or a Brandon Stevens, or the way that the Ravens usually like their corners. He does not have that build, but that doesn't mean he's not physical. And he showed that 1000%. Justin asked, what do I think the Wiggins injury is? It's so hard to speculate. And again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to bring any professional medical evaluation into this, but it's tough because he got up and if you go back on the actual hit, he got up and was kind of waving his arms a little bit. It wasn't like putting him above his head or anything, but he was waving him a little bit. I think he could kind of tell something was wrong off the bat. They did slap. The thing that kind of, I don't know if concern is the word, but that worries me a little is they did classify Sanusi Canes as a stinger and Nate Wiggins as a shoulder. So I don't know what that is, whether it's a labrum issue, whether it's a collarbone issue. There's such a wide range of variety. It could very well be a stinger, right? I'm not ruling that out whatsoever. It very well could be, and they just don't have the testing yet. So we're going to see what happens. But for Wiggins, that's kind of what everybody's holding their breath on and kind of put a little bit of a damper on the game in general because he was just so good throughout the entire game. And again, it's not like the Eagles had A.J. Brown out there and Jalen Hurts out there and Devonta Smith and all those guys. But again, it's not like the Ravens had, Lamar out there or Henry, any of those guys. So this is what you wanted to see. I think it would be a little concerning if Wiggins struggled against the Philadelphia guys that were out there. But he did what he was supposed to do. He went out there against second, third stringers, and he dominated. And so to me, the injury does, it's kind of like a damn moment. But in my opinion, you still have an opportunity to look at this film if you're Nate Wiggins. Hopefully everything's good with the injury and we move on from there. So yeah, I think that the big story is Nate Wiggins, but obviously there is a lot more to dive into. So coming up in the second part of the show, we'll continue talking about who performed well. We'll get more into chat as well. Stay tuned for that. We have a lot to get to here on this instant reaction post-game live edition of Locked On Ravens coming your way on Friday night. First, though, this show is brought to you by eBay Motors. And passion, drive, and patience to form winning championships is also what keeps Ride or Die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain a vehicle and level up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has it covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. All the parts you need are the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items, low exclusion supply, eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. We are back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens Live. Kevin Oestreicher still breaking it down here with you on this Friday night. About 11:15. Appreciate everybody who was here tonight, and making Locked On Ravens a part of your night. Really appreciate that. Again, the Ravens lose 16-13 to the Eagles in a pretty wild game preseason-wise. But I think the big conversation here, and I've seen it all over the chat, and I'll try to find a couple of comments about it here. It is the backup quarterback situation. And I saw Cam commented it, and I also see the question, and this one from John here. Tannehill is still a free agent, but money, and would he accept the backup role? I mean, I don't think Tannehill's starting anywhere. I think if you were to sign somewhere, it would be as a high-level backup. The Ravens historically haven't done that a ton recently. They haven't paid that high-level backup, right? The last vet backup they had, not named Josh Johnson. Obviously, RG3 was a big part of what Lamar was and his development over the course of the younger years of his career. But yeah, look, in my opinion, the backup quarterback position is one of the key worry points for me. And this kind of does go into the stock up, stock down, who played well, who didn't. Josh Johnson was not good tonight. Josh Johnson struggled. And so when you talk about the Ravens quarterback situation, look, we can be honest, right? If Lamar Jackson goes down or has to miss time, and obviously, knock on wood, he doesn't. If he goes down, that really lowers the ceiling and the floor of your team. Lamar is the guy that makes the gears turn. But you do need to have a quality backup that you can go out there and put out and trust. And even though Tyler Huntley was not, the most spectacular backup quarterback, and there were some issues, of course, with him, there were moments when he led this team and did his thing. And not that Josh Johnson hasn't done that even in a Ravens uniform. But if he's not that guy anymore, this defense is good enough to where if you can have a somewhat competent backup quarterback, then you can still make noise, right? You can still make noise. So, again, that's why I think a lot of people, when you talk about without that's any team without their star quarterback, right? Like if the Chiefs didn't have Patrick Mahomes, if the Bengals didn't have Joe Burrow, if the Eagles didn't have Hurts, et cetera, we can go all the way, right? Bills with Josh Allen, that whole list. But again, like this defense and the pieces around Lamar are good enough to, if you insert, let's say, a Tannehill, and by the way, Tannehill and Lamar are pretty different players. Like I feel like they would want somebody who could run the system a little better than that, right? To not have to do a complete 180 to the point where it's not like it was in 2018, where they had Lamar Jackson running a pretty much Joe Flacco-led offense. And we know that Lamar Jackson and Joe Flacco are two polar opposites as players in terms of athleticism and everything, where Lamar can get out and Flacco could do it too. But obviously, from an athleticism perspective, Lamar and Joe were two very different players. So, yeah, it's tough because, again, you kind of probably want to see what he has over the next couple of weeks. Obviously, they're not just going to cut him right now or make him move right now. But I would say if he struggles again next week, they could seriously look into that. And here's the crazy thing about all this. I don't even know if Tyler Huntley makes Cleveland's roster, if we're being honest. So how crazy would it be? I'm not saying it's going to happen. But how crazy would it be if Tyler Huntley were to come back to Baltimore after, again, I thought it was pretty clear he's going to try to compete for a starting job somewhere, but I think he's honestly the fourth quarterback in Cleveland right now. So, yeah, we're going to see. I see Brandon Allen as a potential option there. It could be, but I don't know what's going on with the quarterback situation outside of Lamar, because Lamar's the guy that makes the gears turn, but Josh Johnson's throws were inaccurate even out of the flat tonight. Like when he was trying to target running backs in the flat, they were inaccurate. Some of the other throws were inaccurate. But the big conversation is, do the Ravens need another backup quarterback? The reports out of camp on Josh Johnson have not been very encouraging. And obviously tonight, the results were not encouraging as well. Now I see Kevin and Zach React, a.k.a. Zach Bollinger, on that account saying, shout out to Bo Braid for leading the team in tackles. He thought Patrick Queen was back, and they didn't even realize he was on the account. So Zach is in the chat here. Obviously, Kevin and Zach React is another show I'm a part of where we do reactions to every live Orioles game, and also we're dabbling with some Ravens content as well. But obviously here on Locked On Ravens, we have to do this one first, and that is, of course, the order of what we do things in here. But in terms of Bo Braid and some of the younger guys in the secondary not named Nate Wiggins, I thought that we saw some pretty encouraging things. I thought Bo Braid was really good wearing that number 6, right? Pepe Williams was another guy, right? Had one of those returns and had that sack coming off that unblocked corner blitz. And that backup slot position, by the way, is going to be really important with the news of Arthur Millette and him having that scope. And we don't really know, expected to miss about a month of the season. But so I think that competition now comes down to Pepe Williams and Ardarius Washington. And while I don't think Washington was bad by any stretch, I think Pepe just popped a little bit more. So that'll be a competition to watch for sure. Obviously, Nate Wiggins was the big story. Daryl Worley had 6 tackles with a pass deflection in there, he's not a young guy on the defense, right? But we saw Eddie Jackson get some run as well. So a lot of guys and other injury updates, because again, I see Jonathan asking what's the news on Nate. We don't know yet, John. We've kind of been waiting, but John Harbaugh said that there are no updates and we'll know more with testing tomorrow. So we will get some level of an update once that news breaks tomorrow. Other injury updates, by the way, from the game. Sanusi Kane did have a stinger injury, and then Chris Board was ruled out with a concussion. I think that was in the first half, if I'm not mistaken there. Man, I see Lamar Tamora saying, call Cam Newton. Man, how crazy would that be? How crazy. I don't think it happens, but man, how incredible would that be? Oh, Mike asking for a 1-up, 1-down. We do that over on Kevin and Zach React for the Orioles. All right, let's do a 1-up, 1-down. So 1-up, 1-down is essentially one player who did really well and one player who did not. I'm going to go Nate Wiggins for the 1-up, obviously, right? He was really good. Talked about it, play with that tenacity and everything. But I'm going to give a different 1-down than Josh Johnson, and this will kind of lead us into our next conversation. I thought Daniel Falele did not look like a starter tonight. He obviously got the nod at right guard. Falele, again, we kind of talk about, is the athleticism there enough for him? He's a big human. He has a lot of functional strength. He has like all the tools you would want. But I thought that he was going to be in the competition for right tackle. That was obviously, we thought was going to go to Roger Rosengarten, but he wasn't really ever in that job, right? And then they're like, okay, let's try him out at guard. And he looked okay there, but then there were reps where he struggled. And then tonight, it just it didn't look good. He was getting beat, wasn't getting his hands on guys, and it didn't look like he was a guard. And that to me is a little concerning, because I think, again, even if you want to put in all 5 of these guys, right, the starters, I think Stanley's obviously a lock. I think Voorhees, who I thought played well tonight, he's a lock as well, at least all but. Linderbaum, when he's healthy, is a lock. And then I think Rosengarten, who I thought also played well tonight, is all but a lock. But that right guard spot is so uncertain right now. We don't know who that's going to be. I don't think it's Faalele anymore. I think he's kind of relegated to backup tackle duty again. I feel like it's probably – oh, this is so tough. I feel like it's probably going to be Ben Cleveland. I feel like it will probably be Ben Cleveland. I thought that Cleveland was pretty good tonight. Obviously played a lot of center with Linderbaum out. Linderbaum probably wasn't going to play anyway, right? But Cleveland's getting a look at the backup center, and I just think it is probably the easiest route for them to go with Ben Cleveland. He's been a mystery, right, for the majority of this training camp. We don't really know what's going on with him. I think he's played every single position, if we're being honest, throughout the course of his career in some way, shape, or form. Cam, actually, with the 5D chess idea here, Ben Cleveland is quarterback 2. Who could sack him? Got to go for the legs if you want to sack Ben Cleveland, man. But yeah, I think it's the starting right guard. It's probably going to come down to Ben Cleveland, Patrick McCary, and I know that they don't want to start Patrick McCary, not because he's not talented, he obviously is, but because I really do think that they're in love with him in that Super 6 offensive lineman role, which they should be. So we know they were sniffing around Connor Williams, right? The former Dolphins center, Cowboys guard, who ended up signing with Seattle and with Mike McDonald over there. I think they are still looking for offensive line help, because I don't know if they trust anybody to play right guard. I think they know who 4 of their 5 guys are going to be, pretty much, right? Voorhees and Rosengarten are pretty much the starters in my eyes there, without it being officially confirmed. But that right guard position is still so far up in the air right now. And of course, we're almost 3 weeks away from the start of the season. So they have to start really getting into a rhythm of who that is going to be. Coming up, though, still going to be talking about a stock report, getting into other guys on the offensive side of the ball, defensive side of the ball, and who could be a sneaky contributor to this team this season. So be sure to stay tuned again. We got a lot to get to still on Locked On Ravens. Don't go anywhere. First, the show is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and free. And for me, I've had a ton of great experiences over on LinkedIn, whether it's finding jobs, networking, connecting. LinkedIn has it all. And LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a new job might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses go to qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professional like professional on LinkedIn. Plus, 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. For a lot of people, myself, other people as well, there are self-care non-negotiables. Maybe you never skip leg day or therapy day. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard to make time for it. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. And therapy has so many benefits, like learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries. It can empower you to become the best version of yourself. And it isn't just for those who experience major trauma, it's for everyone. If they're going to start in therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, get a master licensed therapist, switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. We are back. Locked On Ravens live edition, final segment. Kevin Ostrick is still here with you again. Really appreciate everybody for tuning in today. And be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, video form, audio form. We are here for you 5 days per week. Actually, Monday is going to be my 5-year anniversary hosting the show, taking you all the way back to 2019. So we got a milestone coming up tomorrow. We'll be back with a bonus episode, getting into a full stock up, stock down, stock report for the Ravens in this week 1 preseason loss. And of course, we do go live after every single Ravens game here on this channel. So if you want to get in the live chat with everybody in here, be sure to turn notifications on. But if you miss it, of course, you can watch it back in video form, or you can, of course, listen to it in audio form as well. We got a lot still to talk about here. And I'm trying to look through. I want to get into the chat a little bit as well. Darian asking, what did I think of Roger Rosengarten? I thought he played well. I thought that he was able to anchor well. The thing with Rosengarten is the foot speed is there. And as a pass protector, obviously he had the track record in college with, I believe it was 2 seasons of no pressures. Maybe I can't remember the exact number, but as a pass protector, he was elite. And I thought he held up pretty well tonight. He was doing some level of a rotation in there with Patrick McCary, but in his action, I thought that he was able to work in space decently well. He was able to open up some holes for the running backs to go through. And I thought overall, was it perfect? No, but I thought that it was a very encouraging debut for Roger Rosengarten. And Justin actually bringing up a guy I wanted to talk about here. Joe Evans is one of these guys, especially with Malik Cam, obviously, unfortunately, suffering the ACL injury. There is a real chance that Joe Evans can make this roster. Had a couple of really nice rushes, seemed to be involved and around the football. His stat line was 6 tackles on the day. I thought he was super active and looked really, really good. And if the Ravens decide to keep maybe, I think the number's probably 6 outside linebackers, I think that he could be a guy that definitely has a spot on this roster. Obviously, the 5 right now would be Kyle Van Noy, Odafe Owe, David Ajabo, and then it's Tavius Robinson and Adisa Isaac. I thought Tavius Robinson looked decent, and the David Ajabo did not play in this game, and it was for medical reasons that he just was not clear to do it. I believe the quote was from John Harbaugh. I'll check on that quickly as I'm talking here, but it was a medical reason for David Ajabo, not a new injury or anything like that. I just think, again, as he kind of works his way and ramps his way up, they are just trying to get him back into the shape that they need. But Jeff and I talked about that, and yeah, here it is from Jess Rubeck. John Harbaugh said David Ajabo still hasn't been cleared to play in games by doctors. And again, he had that ACL surgery about 8 to 9 months ago. So it was not a thing about Ajabo and him being benched or being a starter and not getting any time, right? For me, it's just tough because we know Kyle Van Noy can be a guy for them, obviously. We know Odafe always hoping to take that breakout year. But then behind that, it's tough. I think they probably do need to bring in another edge guy because Jadeveon Clowney, the way that this is shaping up, it's going to loom pretty large. So is Joe Evans a guy that steps up? And I see Zach say, if I had to make an Iowa linebacker in the lab, would be Joe Evans. Yeah, man. We know Geno Stone is an Iowa legend too. So maybe, Geno Stone going to the Bengals, the Ravens needed another Iowa legend, a new Iowa legend on that defense. So we will see. Flower Season saying the run defense was extremely poor. Yeah, a lot of holes on the defensive lines. And I thought Travis Jones was very good tonight. And I thought Broderick Washington had his moments as well. But again, what I kind of tried to remember during this whole thing is the Ravens will have Michael Pierce in this group. They'll have Justin Madubuike in this group as well, who I know Madubuike can kind of be up and down in run defense. But Michael Pierce is such a hassle to block for defenses. And I thought that Travis Jones, whenever I singled in on him, and again, kind of looking back on film, we'll kind of figure out this whole thing too, but he was just bullying his offensive line as well. Like every guy he was lined up against, he was bullying that guy. So I don't know. It feels like to me that, because the team stats, let me pull up the actual stats just to give us reference here quickly. The Eagles average at the end of the day, it was only 3.8 yards per rush. The Ravens averaged 3.6. But I know it felt a lot longer than that. The Eagles had a long rush of, where are we? Up? Nope. There are apparently no offensive stats anymore. So I'm glad I got the Ravens in before this ended up crashing on me. But yeah, the Eagles, I thought that Will Shipley was one of my favorite. If you've been listening to me on this show, Will Shipley was one of my favorite running backs in this class. And the Eagles look like they got a good one. And I actually see Cam giving an idea here. Judon for a 4th at the deadline. I would not be shocked if Matthew Judon is a member of this team at some point this season. There's a obvious need there for the Ravens. Judon is clearly unhappy in New England. The Ravens would have to make the money work somehow. And obviously they'd have to make it worth the Patriots' while. But I definitely do think that Judon could be a member of this team. And I agree with this one from NanoRave8 here saying Tylan Wallace played well. Yeah, I thought Tylan Wallace played a really good game. Dayton Wade had that tough drop at the beginning, or at least a little more towards the beginning of the game, but I thought he recovered very nicely as well. But I thought Tylan, again, if we're talking about the leader in the clubhouse for that sixth wide receiver spot, because again, I usually go with 6 wide receivers if I'm building out my roster, right? Obviously, I'm not the one making the roster, but if they do keep 6, I'd probably put Tylan Wallace on there. But yeah, just a weird game. A weird game. I'm hoping to see a little bit more out of a couple of other guys. Obviously, Josh Johnson being one of them. I saw Justin saying Kadir Esmail could hopefully get some looks next game. I agree. Hopefully he can as well. But yeah, then I see Cam saying, can we appreciate the Ravens secondary? They played pretty well throughout the course of this game, right? Gave up some completions here or there. But again, with Wiggins being as good as he was, but you have Marlon Humphrey, Brandon Stevens, Marcus Williams, Kyle Hamilton, Eddie Jackson, Millette when he's healthy, all these guys, that is, in my opinion, the best secondary in the league. And so to me, when you're talking about, could, the Ravens struggle with some pass rush? They could, but you know what helps a pass rush? It's a good secondary because coverage sacks are real. Coverage sacks are a thing. And so if Marlon is back to himself, if Brandon Stevens has another great year, if Wiggins can continue what we saw and hopefully everything's good with him, man, this corner group plus Williams and Hamilton, I'm telling you, that is an incredible safety group, plus the corners in there as well. Now, other stock up, stock down guys. I mentioned Josh Ross earlier. He was somebody I thought played really well, especially earlier on in the game. I thought he was everywhere. I thought he was doing a lot of good things next to Trenton Simpson. Obviously, when Roquan is there, Roquan is the guy, right? He elevates everybody. But I do think Baltimore's inside linebacker depth, a lot of people were concerned about it because Queen obviously left for Pittsburgh. And yes, that is a fair concern to have. But in my opinion, look, let me tell you, the Ravens have guys like Josh Ross and others to fill in that gap. Chris Board obviously left with the concussion. Hopefully he's all good there, but he can also play on special teams as well. And then I think I covered everybody. Well, one more guy actually that I didn't cover, Sanusi Kane, going back to the secondary, obviously got injured, had that personal foul penalty. You can't lead in with the crown of your helmet in the head, neck, shoulder area of a receiver. So that was the correct penalty call there. But I thought that he, again, on special teams looked really good. And Tylan Wallace had a special teams play as well. If you're looking to make this Ravens roster, contribute on special teams and be versatile. That's a way to make this roster. I don't think Sanusi Kane was ever in danger of not making the roster here. Obviously, Eric DeCosta has more of a quicker release on some of these draft picks. But I think for Sanusi Kane, yeah, he's a guy that to me could be that safety depth type player. I think that he could be a pretty good just special teams piece as well. And Shantae asking if they get another quarterback, do you potentially see Josh Johnson being number 3 on the depth chart? This is an interesting question, actually, because then it depends on how many they keep. Because if they only keep 2 quarterbacks and feel like they can sneak Devin Leary onto the practice squad, which they could very well do, that's the way to do it. But if they bring in a Ryan Tannehill or one of these other guys, they might cut Josh Johnson. I think that Johnson would make the practice squad. I don't think anybody will be jumping out of their seat to go get Josh Johnson personally. But if they bring in a backup quarterback, I still think that they only keep 2 guys, and that means Leary and Josh Johnson get cut, and then we would have to see how that would work. Emory Jones, yeah, he is not making the roster, in my opinion here, and was just a weird first snap to have. Not a great debut for Josh Johnson or for Emory Jones. But yeah, this is the thing that I was talking about, right? If anything happens to Lamar, the team, I mean, not that they can't compete, but Lamar he is the one that makes this team a Super Bowl contender, right? He's the one that makes this offense go, that the gears turn. So if Lamar goes down, the floor and the ceiling is already dropping off significantly. But as I said earlier, I think the floor and the ceiling of this defense and of the position players around Lamar are good enough. So if they get a competent backup quarterback in there, they can still certainly compete. And then Owen Wright, I think Darian, he looked great to me. He had a speed element to him. He was shifty in there, was hitting the hole really, really hard. And the Ravens might have something there. And it honestly might be a competition between him and Rasheen Ali in terms of who makes this roster. We know that Eric DaCosta is not shy to move off of 5th-round picks. Obviously, that he cut Kyu Blu Kelly last season, traded away Sean Wade. He got rid of Ben Mason, right? He is not afraid to move off of rookies before their first season. And so if Owen Wright is a better player, Owen Wright will make this roster over Rasheen Ali if they do not keep 4 running backs, which could be the thing. And Justin, I know I'm joking around, obviously, right? Like, it was a weird first play for him, but for Emery, he will get a real chance. It was literally one play. It's tough, but he will get a real shot. And this was kind of something. And if you listen to the episode with Jeff Zrebiec, I kind of hinted at this with him, and he was like, yeah, this could be a competition between Owen Wright and Rasheen Ali for one roster spot. And I know some people might be surprised that the Ravens do move off of Rasheen Ali, and it's nothing against Ali, but I would not be surprised. If Owen Wright plays better than Rasheen Ali, I don't think Ali makes the roster. The only way that would happen is if they were to keep 4 running backs off the bat and then cut one of them once Keaton Mitchell came back, which is a possibility. But if you keep 4 running backs, you obviously have to then you maybe sacrifice on the offensive line a spot. You sacrifice in the secondary a spot. And I would rather have those positions and others over a 4th running back, even though in this offense it's valuable. I think that you could probably get Rasheen Ali on the practice squad. Not guaranteed, obviously, with his draft status, and I'm sure other teams would maybe want him. But, man, if Owen Wright keeps playing like this, guess what? Other teams are going to want Owen Wright, man. So that's going to kind of be how that is. And this is a good point here, too. Dayton Wade, it was a tough go for him with that drop, right? This is just a typical thing that happens across all levels, right? He was looking upfield before he caught the ball. So he was ready for the ball, and then he was looking before the ball got there. And it hit him in the hands, and he dropped it. So it's tough, but he did redeem himself. I thought he looked good after that. And look, some guys can just kind of fold after a tough play, right? Dayton Wade responded, and that was really, really encouraging to me. And Cam, any idea when Keaton can return? I'd expect him to stay on the PUP list, probably come off anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks because he tore it in December. Tore it in what week? Was it week 12, week 13, week 4? Was it week 15? I can't even remember what week it was, but it was late in the season. It wasn't week 11. It was like week 15. But he tore it late in the year. So, it's going to be tough, but Keaton is probably going to miss. I'd probably assume the first half of the year. So, Ravens lose 16-13 to the Philadelphia Eagles. I think this was an awesome recap show. And one more on the way out. How does everyone feel about the kickoff rule? Man, it is confusing. There are so many different elements. It's going to take some time to get used to for sure. But again, it's a preseason. Everybody's still kind of getting used to how it goes there. But hey, we'll be back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens, 6 a.m. Eastern time. We'll be doing a live. Not a live show. This was a live show. It'll be a pre-recorded show at 6 a.m. 6 a.m. will be early for a live show, man. But we'll be back tomorrow with a stock report here at 6 a.m. on Locked On Ravens. We'll be going to a full stock up, full stock down. Who played well, who did not on this Baltimore Ravens team in week 1. We'll talk about Nate Wiggins, obviously, and a bunch of the other players. So be sure to hit that like button, subscribe on YouTube. Also, listen in audio form as well. Really appreciate the audio community and the video community as well. Tell a friend, tell a family member. We are here for them with any Ravens coverage they want 5 days per week, plus more. A new thing we're introducing this season as well is game day episodes. So on game days, particularly Sundays, right, we're going to have a 6 a.m. episode come out prior to game day to get everybody pumped up and ready for the game. But again, really appreciate everybody. We'll be right back here tomorrow talking Ravens, talking stock report as the Ravens lose 16-13 to the Eagles in week 1. Stay tuned for that, everybody, and I will see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.